Okay, hello. Okay, I showed you a sequence the last video. It might be pay if you are new here just to go back and watch that video, but it was the 9/11 Odyssey. I called it the Odyssey sequence. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you. I was basically doing some more number doodling with that sequence, and I'm basically going to show you a relationship between that sequence or the 9/11 set of numbers and the actual Fibonacci sequence. Okay, I'm going to explain what's going on here in the tape, in this chart that I've got drawn out, and we're going to, reference a little bit back to that other video, but I've got everything on here, so I'll do a little bit of explaining for new people real quick, and then we'll get straight into it. So, because it can be a little confusing with all these numbers right in front of us. Okay, so the first thing I want to preference before we get started is by saying, if you don't know what the Fibonacci or Fibonacci sequence is, you probably should go look that up. But it's just basically a self-generating sequence that encodes the golden ratio. Okay, now Fibonacci happens to start 0, 1, 1, etc. Okay, but we don't need to start it there. Okay, you can pick any two numbers to start a Fibonacci type sequence. Okay, this self-generating sequence, and you can pick any two numbers, and those two numbers, as they get sort of, as they generate the next number on, what we edge towards is the golden ratio. And I'm going to talk about the golden ratio in the next video probably, but it's basically the number that we see in the world around us without really realizing it. It's that ratio between all physical matter. Okay, and so when you see something that's pleasing to the eye, usually the golden ratio is heavily embedded in that thing. You're able to pick out that natural beauty of the golden ratio. So there is a natural instinct there to be able to recognize what is essentially balance in the world. Okay, now, so I've been toying with this idea of just starting a Fibonacci type sequence with the number 9/11, because of course that's the big number, isn't it? Which I did, and I showed you that in the last video. Now, the problem is which way around you start that sequence, because the way around you start that sequence will affect the following on numbers. Okay, so you'll see I've got a 9/11, the way we talk about 9/11, okay, started at the top here, and this is the number sequence for starting with the number 9/11 in this order. Now, if you reverse the order of 9/11, you'll see that the sequence is slightly different. Okay, and you get slightly different numbers. You still get some very interesting numbers like the number 29, which is a heavy balance number, the number 49, which is a heavy idea of rebirth. Okay, again, here's the number 127, the three towers. Here's Christmas here. So you'll see some very interesting numbers still in this sequence. But what I was thinking was, well, this is kind of like twins here. We've got a sort of a opposite counterpart set of numbers. And I'm thinking to myself, well, in the normal table, when I show you my normal chart of Lorraine, we're looking at two columns that balance reality, normally, which is one column on the 5 in the number line, and the one column on the 6 in the number line. Okay, which ends up being towers 1 and 2, and then we have tower 7 as well, which balances those two towers. Okay, because this number 7 here, this row here, actually is the balance point between these two things, as I've got drawn in there with the this sort of mirror line here. Well, this set of orange numbers that I've got running here is essentially doing the same thing, between this row up here, this red row of 9/11, and the blue row of 9/11. It's a balanced set of numbers, and all I did is I took the average between these two things here. Okay, so what is interesting about taking the average between these two sets of numbers is we end up with the Fibonacci sequence in here. Okay, we can just ignore these zeros off of here. Okay, and we end up with basically the Fibonacci sequence, right? Obviously, it's not starting on the number 0. Well, not really a number, but it's not starting at the point of 0. And it's got, every number's got an extra 0 on it, but these are Fibonacci numbers, right? Let me just explain again how we got to this and what I'm saying when I'm saying I'm averaging these two. Yeah, so you take this 11, this 9, add them together is 20, divide by 2 and gives you the 10. Okay, you do the same here. Obviously that's the same. 20 divided by 2 is 10. Okay, then we have the next sequence, the next number on is 20 and 20. Okay, obviously that's going to be a 20. Okay, and then we have 29 plus 31, which comes to 60, divided by 2 is 30. And so what you'll see is that the Fibonacci sequence, essentially, with a 0 added on, is balancing out, these two 9/11, these two twin 9/11 sequences. And again, I'd called that previous video, I'd called that sequence the Odyssey sequence, because 9/11 repeats here. Okay, you start the sequence and it repeats at the number 10. Okay, and if you look at the start of the sequence, there's a reverse number 10 there. And obviously the Odyssey, as we're talking about Odysseus, is 10 years going into war and then 10 years sort of getting back home again, coming out of that system of war. All right, this is exactly what happens to us, right? Is that when we are born, we go into that system of war. We're basically at war with one another. We're all fighting to take advantage of one another. At that point, that's what makes us all sinners. The fact that we can't exchange our time equally with one another is really what makes us sinners. And as much as you might think that you are fair with another man, the fact of the matter is, if you sit and think about it long enough and hard enough, you'll realize that to take somebody else's, to exchange what we call time, our own time with each other unfairly, i.e. paying somebody a different rate of wage, is basically not in line with God. And that's essentially what makes us sinners at the end of the day. But that's a topic for another day. But anyway, I've called it, the Odyssey thing because of this 10-10, and obviously the Odyssey is a 20-year total thing, and it's split into two lots of 10. Okay, there's a point of the story making that point that it's two 10-year periods. And of course, when we look at the balancing numbers now, that the Space Odyssey, the 2001 Space Odyssey, is balanced with, okay, now it makes even more sense, because the whole thing is 10-10, excuse me, XX, two lots of X's, and for a total of 20 years. So this makes even more, it just makes more sense, this relationship between the Odyssey and 9/11 now. Okay, let me show you a couple of other things in here that I thought was very interesting. Obviously, I'm going to show you a number jump that's going to be coming up, and I'll explain that in just a minute. But I want to show you this idea again with the number 10, which is the end and the start of a new cycle. Okay, and this is, again, the idea of rebirth is the number 10, obviously. And obviously, the number 10, we could write that like this. Okay, Q. Okay, the 1 here is representative of the physical, yeah, and of course the 0 is representative of the metaphysical, or the balance point between two sides of reality. Okay, so Again, the Queen happens to die on the 8th of September. Okay, so again, this now, this is linking back to this idea of death and rebirth. Again, what has to happen is that old hag, that is what the Queen became. She was just hanging around, wouldn't let Charlie Boy become king, and so she's got to go before the new king can be born. Okay, before man can take back his rightful place. And when I say man, what I'm talking about is mankind. When we talk about man, we're talking about mankind. Not necessarily, man being in charge of reality like the physical man, like the male aspect. I'm talking about the actual physical being of man, which is men and women together. Okay, because a lot of people, there's some people out there that might not realize that. Anyway, so what's going on? Queen's got to die. The Matrix has got to die before Charlie Boy can take back, be back in charge. And again, you can see the numbers with Charlie Boy. November the 14th, obviously, is the next stage on from this is this guy's birthday, and the birthday is becoming king again. The chances of this, these numbers being like this, what are the chances? I'll show you some other things in here. Another interesting thing is if when I'm talking about balancing reality, this is what this blue line is in here. This is like the balance point of reality here. I guess right here would be for this particular table, would be our kind of balance point. And we've got the two sides of reality. We've got the metaphysical and the physical, right? And this ends up being Tower 1, and this ends up being Tower 2, and then over here we've got Tower 7, okay, which is still number 7. And again, this Tower number 7 is basically these two combined, yeah? So if we look at what number 7 is here, obviously 7 is a very divine number. Look at the numbers that are involved with the number 7 here, that are balancing both sides of reality. Or this point here, the crossover between life and death, and being in the Matrix and being reborn. Look at the numbers. Yeah, it's not difficult to pick out, reverse that for a 12 and a 25. It's not difficult to pick out Christmas here. Super duper interesting. So obviously, 9/11 is obviously got a massive link to Christmas. Again, the number 7 and 4 are highly, you'll see 7 and 4 turning up together. Obviously, they total 11. That's important. But it's kind of like numbers go in pairs, and a lot of the time, those numbers that are in pairs are adding up to 11. Okay, and again, the number, when we're looking at rebirth, shooting through the bullseye, here we go. The number 50 is the bullseye, okay, on the dartboard, yeah? And again, if we go from 9/11 and we go 105 days, that's going to take us to Christmas, yeah? Here's our 51, and here's our 49 that's to do with rebirth. This was Easter this year, and it's also Labor Day. Another thing that is, I believe, a reference to rebirth. Okay, it's not really for the workers. It's really a holiday. It's a hidden in plain sight holiday that is to do with the idea of rebirth. Okay. What else do I want to say about this? So on the topic of let's do a number jump now, and I want to show you something else, right? Because I believe this whole thing, well, obviously it starts way before 9/11 happened, okay? Before 2001. But again, 2001 is not difficult to find in here. Obviously, 2001. Obviously, the whole start of the whole sequence here with the 2 and the 1 is not difficult to find. So, but what I want to say is, and it's one of these things that just sticks in the back of my mind, because I don't know, why. I mean, it's just one of those things like 9/11, which was the death of Princess Diana. I happen to used to sleep with the radio on quite a bit, and it was one of those weird things. It came on the radio in the sort of very early hours of the morning, and it was surreal. Like, I woke up and it was almost like you dreamed it. I don't sleep with the radio on anymore, but it's almost like I dreamed it. That it happened. But yeah, I remember that quite vividly, actually, and it's the death of Princess Diana. Okay, and if we read into this, the 31st of August. Okay, so again, with the royal thing going on, the death of this, and the Queen carrying on her reign until Charlie Boy. It's almost like that thing had to happen. The death of the princess had to happen, and it's part of that idea of going into the Matrix. The princess didn't last forever. All the glitz and the glamour of that thing, or the perfectness of that thing, didn't last. Okay, and so that's why that thing died at that point. We had the reign of the Queen for an extended period of time, the old hag, and finally, when she croaks, Charlie Boy becomes king. So the references in here with the royalty are pretty mental, I think. Are actually makes a lot more sense now than how I had it set up in my other chart, because I don't know, it just makes more sense with the idea of balance and, that kind of thing. I don't know. Anyway, I want to show you something else, because, of course, we can read some numbers out of here. And there was a number jump that I showed you quite a while back. It would have actually been around about 9/11 time. But if we read some numbers back and go sort of in this direction away from balance, okay, I want to read these numbers to you. And I'm actually going to start with going past this sort of point of, we've kind of had these ones play out here, and the idea of going through the bullseye. So I want to read some numbers that come on the end of here that actually happen to link to the Hoover Dam. Okay, so we're going to read these numbers, and then we're going to read, these last few numbers here as well. So basically what we end up with is 3, 2, and then a 1, 1, and then if we carry on going away from the center, reading our numbers, we got a 2, 3, 3. Now I showed a number jump which goes from 9/11 of this year, okay, so 2023, and if you go back 32,123 days, okay, it's going to take you to, if I go another spot to write this, it will take you to the 30th of September, okay, 1935. And why is that date important? Because that's the kind of that's the dedication of the Hoover Dam. Okay, so this set of numbers is really important. The idea of a countdown back to balance, and then and having those mirror opposites, super duper important. And the fact that those numbers that are on the end of this sequence, yeah, are these. And again, I mean, I know it's a bit of a fudgery job, but double numbers, anytime I see like a double number, I've been doing a sort of reduction that just takes this down to a single digit of the same number. So rather than this 33 reducing to a 6, I would reduce that to a 3. I would say that's a 2. I would say the 11 is an ace, is a 1. And so what you end up with is that set of numbers, kind of. Okay, yeah, you've got to fudge it, but, and when you start reducing numbers anyway, you're reducing you're reducing the number, you're reducing the connectivity, or you're actually increasing. What I'm saying is you're reducing the, I think, the significance of the number a little bit, but you will find more connections with that number. But again, do you reduce the significance of it slightly? Yes. So of course, but anyway, this the 3 2 1 2 3 number jump. Okay, so that's really interesting. But let me show you something now. Actually, I've got it. So let's get rid of all this jazz. And I want to show you just one thing. I've already got it in the number jumper. Let's click on it. Okay, and what I've got is I've got the other dedication date in here. I've just got it the wrong way around. But March the 1st is where, in 1936, is when the Hoover Dam was, I guess, officially handed over for operation or something like that, something along those lines. The companies that build the thing handed it over to the federal government, I think, at that point, right? So March the 1st is another one of those significant dates, 1936. One other note to make is that the Hoover Dam became 88 years old on that 9/11, between the 9/11 date this year, or well, it would have been the 30th of September when it became 88 years old. But with that number jump this year, that was making it around about 88 years old on the 30th of September. Well, if we go from this date here, it will becoming this baby will becoming 88 years old again here. Another birthday reference here, another significant date in the initial beginnings of the Hoover Dam here. Anyway, it happens to be 32,123 days to February the 11th, okay, 2024. What is significant about this date is that Super Bowl is going to be in Las Vegas at the Death Star, which is again another reference back to the dam, and of course the Death Star sequence with the raid on the Death Star, which is basically the Dam Busters or 633 Squadron rehashed. Okay, when they blow up the Death Star there, that is basically the Dam Busters. Okay, there's another reference to it. Okay, and the Death Star, which is of course a moon, an evil moon, that thing, is referencing the Hoover Dam, and I mean it's right there. And of course, who plays there but the Raiders? And if you've ever looked at the Ark of the Covenant, the two winged angels. I've talked about all this stuff before, but the two winged angels on the Ark of the Covenant. What is at the Hoover Dam? The two winged angels. That is the Ark, but it's the false Ark. Okay. The two winged angels aren't connecting their wings together. I don't know if you've noticed that. They're sticking straight up. Okay, those wings need to come together and be balanced. And again, it's just stuff like the Raiders of the Lost Ark. And if you watch the film, there's a ton of references in there. And in fact, I'll give you another reference that's in The Last Crusade. I just spotted this the other day, and it's a really great reference. Now, in the Grail Diary, in The Last Crusade, if you go watch the film, what you'll notice is that when Indy receives it from his dad, from Sean, I'm switching between actors' names and whatnot here now, but when he receives that Grail diary and he flicks through it, you will notice that there is a $1 bill drawn into that diary. You have to stop it real quick to find it, but it's in there. It's not a marker or any. It's not a page. Because I told my dad about this. He said, "Well, some people used to use like a note as a mark, like a bookmark. It's not. It's drawn into the actual book, so it's an even better reference to this idea of finding the Grail. And of course, the Holy Grail, the thing that is the false Grail takes life, the Holy Grail gives life. Okay, and again, this is what we're toying with, the idea of the Hoover Dam. What's it representing? Well, when we're stuck in the matrix, that thing represents death, and the false Grail, when we are in alignment and balance with God, we are now within the Holy Grail, within Mary. Okay. But anyway, this number jump happens to pop up again on Super Bowl Sunday this year. I was going mental about Super Bowl Sunday last year because of the 213. And again, that number jump from 9/11 to 213 is in the dollar bill, the 155-day number jump. It's one of those old decodes that I've done on the dollar bill. That number jump is in there. And of course, 3 days is, inclusive days, the 11th, the 12th, and the 13th of February. Super duper interesting. I'll tell you another interesting thing is when you go back to this, and now you can see, here is 211 right here, embedded within those same set of numbers that we were just looking at. And of course, 213 is obviously embedded within there as well. So it becomes a very significant, and I hear the people shouting now, Dan, you've not mentioned iPet Go, and that scene in iPet Go with the Black Madonna with the baby Jesus that is obviously not looking too good, and there's that idea of death and rebirth there. Obviously the death of Jesus to be reborn again. The Virgin, well, as I say, the Virgin is the Black Madonna at this point. So she's been corrupted. She's in the shape of the Super Bowl trophy. Okay, so there's that connection to Super Bowl Sunday there as well. And again, what goes off in the background is there's a blue and white vessel, again representing probably the Hoover Dam, the cup of Christ that has been corrupted now, with a explosion coming out the top of it. Okay, I think most people that watch this channel will be fairly aware of iPet Go and all the different parts of that that thing. Okay, so I mean, I think I'm going to leave it there, but there's just so many. There's just the significant thing, like this whole 7 column here, man. That is just, that's pretty mental that Christmas is in there. I'll tell you another thing. I showed you that Christmas code with the Lucas numbers that took you to. It started on 814, yeah, the 14th of August, and went through to 9/11, yeah. Happened to be 28 days later. Okay, interesting. We have the 82 here, so that number jump was a 28-day number jump. Well, guess what? 814 plus 133 days is going to take you again to Christmas again. So that number jump that was encoding Pluto, that I showed you within Lucas numbers, connects right back to this. It's absolutely mental. I mean, it just is absolutely crazy. The more I look at this stuff, the crazier the connections are. But again, yeah, and I'm going to do a video on. Inevitably, I've got to do a video on Madonna. But again, when we're talking about this 133, now when you go from Madonna's birthday, which I'm going to tell you right now, if you do a Madonna sequence with the 6, the 1, and the 8, you will actually get another repeating number with Madonna as well, which I think is, I mean, I haven't done a whole bunch of these number lines, but I think that's probably fairly, I don't think it's super common to see numbers repeated like we do here with 9/11, and again you'll see it with Madonna. Anyway, I'm going to do that video next. But just on the back end of this video, this, if you go from her birthday 131 days, which is on the front of the train in Back to the Future, that will take you again to Christmas. Okay, so, and again with Madonna, her number line, I mean, I'll get around to doing the video, but 104 shows up in there, which is Christmas Eve, from 9/11. And again, when we do the 133 days from her birthday, it's going to take us to, actually not where I'm going from here, from there. So when we do 133 days from her birthday, it's going to take us to this date, okay, which is, well, not exactly this date, but it will take us to, what will it take us to? The 27th of December, 1227. And again, her gematria with the 127 in it. And so we've got a lot of interesting connections, and especially with Madonna with 131, because again, if you go from her birthday and go 168 days, it's going to take you to the 31st of January. I think I may have talked about that as a potential date before as well. So, even 130 days right here, again, that would be from her birthday, would be Christmas Eve. Okay, and obviously the idea of Madonna being the Eve to Christ, which would be the Adam. Again, and that's really what we're trying to get back to, is the Adam, yeah, the dam that has been rebalanced, I guess, with the metaphysical. I don't know. I'm going to leave it there. I don't think I need to put anything else into this video. I will say two more things. There are some significant number jumps when you look at some of these numbers in here, and you do jumps from 9/11 or wherever, and go from 9/11 or Madonna's birthday and use some of these numbers. You get several interesting days that are returned on the results for those. So, but anyway, I'm gonna leave it there, and I hope you enjoyed that one. Hopefully that didn't get too wiffly waffly, but I think, I honestly think this is quite an interesting kind of breakthrough here with this kind of idea here with the Fibonacci being, that, I guess you could have any two numbers that would total 20 to start off, to get going on a Fibonacci sequence as a balance sequence. But again, the reason why 9/11 is so important is because, what's in between there is 10. So, it's one side of the thing and the other side of the thing. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I'll catch you on another video here pretty shortly. I'll try and do that Madonna one. That's pretty interesting as well. Alright, talk to you later. Alright, cheers, bye.